Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about the opening time trial of the Giro d'Italia 2019, which was around Bologna. It was only 8 kilometers. The first 6 of them were flat, and then we had a climb of 2 kilometers, which was actually quite steep. We had an average gradient of 9.7%, and some parts were even up to 16%. So we expected the climbers to do well in this sort of terrain, but you also had to do well on the flat part, because the favorites started quite early and they put in times on the flat of over 70 kilometers per hour. And yeah, but let's get into it. A lot of riders started early, or a lot of the favorite riders started early because there was predictions of bad weather towards the end, which did not happen, but yet again, you never know with the weather. So the race favorites, most of them started early in the race, and for me that made it actually quite hard to focus on the race, because you had to pay attention at the very start. Then came a few young talented riders, then a lot of basically nothing happened, and in the end we had again a few favorites starting, so you had to pay attention the whole broadcast, the whole race. Usually in a time trial, or at least in opening day time trials, all the favorites start at the end, because they want to know, well, what the times of the other favorites are and other riders, so where do they have to go a little harder, how do you have to take the corners and stuff like that. But today, like for example Tom Dumoulin, he started the race, and yeah, he was one of the big favorites. And yeah, the results, in the end, the 100% man so far of the season took the victory, Primož Roglič. He has won every race he entered so far this season. Like really every race he entered, he won. He has not done any one-day races this season, only stage races, but every single one of them he took the victory home. And it was actually with a quite comfortable margin in the end. He was the only rider who finished under 13 minutes. His exact time was 12 minutes and 54 seconds, and nobody came even close to it. We had the top 10 at the end were separated by 40 seconds. That is only the top 10. So yeah, then second in the end was Yates, one of the few favorites who did not start early. He was one of the last riders to start, and you see with his result that it did not hinder him. He still had a good race, he still had a good result, only 19 seconds down in the end. At the split, which was right at the bottom of the climb, he was 18 seconds down. In the end, he finished 19 seconds down. And that was surprising to me, because I thought that Simon Yates could make up ground on the climb to Roglič, but that was not the case. He even lost one more second on that hill, on that climb, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, third was quite a surprise. It was Vincenzo Nibali. I expected him to do well, but not that well, to be quite honest. So the old man he still got it. He's actually in the best form I've ever seen him at the beginning of a Grand Tour. Like the previous few weeks, he was already in decent shape. Usually he starts very slow in his build-up towards the Grand Tour, and then the results come in the second or third week. Now he's already in form, so let's see how that will pan out, especially this Giro d'Italia, because the climbs only start at stage 12, I think, if I remember correctly, on top of my head. But yeah, that is also a big question for Primož Roglič, because not only does he not have the strongest team, but maybe he now has to defend this jersey for a lot of time, for nearly 2 weeks, before the other contenders are even trying to get it from him. Now he has almost 2 weeks of press conferences and stuff like that after every stage, because he wears the jersey of the leader, and we saw last year with Yates that can be a burden, that can take a toll on you. So yeah, we'll have to see. Of course, Roglic, he is in form for quite some time already, so that is the first question I have of him. And the second is, can his team be strong enough to support him for 3 weeks? So we'll have to see about that. Then, fourth rider in the general classification right now is Miguel Angel Lopez. He had the same time as 5th place rider Tom Dumoulin. And now the question is, for these two riders, was Lopez so strong or was Dumoulin so weak in this time trial? Because you expected him to be on the podium together with Roglic, but he just finished inside the top 5. Still a good result, but not as good as you expected. While Lopez only he loses less time than a lot of people expected him to lose. So really strong time trial from the Astana man. And he limited his losses. He said before the race that he had hopes to lose under 2 minutes in total over the 3 time trials that this race has included this year. So a good start for him. Then 6th rider was actually Rafa Majka. And before the race, in my preview, I stated that I would pick Formulo as the GC rider for Bora Hansgrohe, who finished 18th now, while Majka finished well inside the top 10. Really good result from him. I still think that Formulo is in good shape and they have a 1-2 punch, and that could be a great strategic point at some point in the race. Just like Astana, who have a lot of riders placed well, and if they send these riders up the road, like Bora Hansgrohe can do now with 2 riders, or even teams like Astana, who have multiple riders who can attack. And then is the question, can the team of Primož Roglic, Jumbo-Visma, can they defend that? Sepp Kuss had a really bad time today. I was impressed with him last Vuelta, but since then his results have not been that great. He had a crash in the winter, then he was ill in the spring, and yeah, it seems like he has not fully recovered from that. So we'll have to see. If they maybe only have at the end De Plus, who was actually in the top 10 today. He was in 8th position, but before that there was actually Tao Geoghegan Hart, who finished in 7th place. And that is a really good result for him, because the other 2, well, maybe protected riders of Team Ineos, they finished with bad times. We had Sivakov, who was pronounced the captain, or he was announced as the captain before the race, but now Tao had a better result in the time trial than him, and Sosa almost finished 2 minutes down. It was 1 minute and 56 at the end. So yeah, they are both not up to the form as Tao is now, even though at the previous race Divakov took home the general classification with Tao helping him. But yeah, the British rider for a British team, maybe they changed their plans and support him now for these 3 weeks. We all know that they wanted to do well with Bernal, but Bernal had a training crash, so he's out of the race. And now Ineos, with a young lineup, a very young lineup, these 3, well, captains, protected riders, whatever you want to call it for them, I don't think the team will put any pressure on them to finish like on the podium or whatever, but it is a team built around general classification riding. It is a team built around the Grand Tours, and Froome and Thomas did not want to change their race schedule. They want to do well at the Tour de France. So now we'll have to see. It is quite intriguing what this team can do over the next 3 weeks. I will have to watch that closely. So yeah, then came a really surprising result, because inside the top 10, Bauke Mollema, really strong result from him. And I said it before, every 2 years he finishes a Grand Tour in the top 10. And this was a really great start from the Dutchman. He excelled at the climb actually, and really strong result, great form from him. And yeah, let's see what he can do, because if he does not lose much time in the time trials, we know he is a great climber. Yes, he won't win sprints against basically anyone, but yeah, his form is there once again. Sadly, only every other year. He can't seem to finish it off in even-numbered years. He was inside the top 10 in 2017, 15 and 13 of his Grand Tours that he rode in each of those years, but in the even-numbered years he did not finish inside the top 10. That is quite a strange case, but yeah, interesting rider to follow. But let's get into some other results. Well, lastly, I want to mention the last rider of the top 10 before that. That was actually Damiano Caruso, who had also a good result, 10th place. Good result for him. Managed to distance some riders we expected to do better. And for instance, Bob Jungels, before the race, I picked him somewhere between 5 and 15 for the time trial. He finished in 13th place, so that was within that prediction, but still on the lower end. And it seems like the climb was too steep for him. Usually he is a better time trialer, and that is the problem with Bob Jungels, that he is not the best climber when it goes up steep. The long gradient climbs he is actually quite well, because he has a big diesel engine, he can push up those climbs. But the steep hills, those are never his strong suit. And yeah, it will be a hard task for him to get inside the top 10 at the end of the race. But what is positive for Bob Jungels is that his recovery is almost second to none in the whole pro peloton. And I really mean that, because in each of his Grand Tours, like even when he was still riding at track, he always is one of the strongest riders inside the last week of those Grand Tours. The first week he's usually very weak. The second week he is okay. And in the third week, when a lot of riders get tired, that is where he excels at. That is where he is best at, because his recovery is so strong. Just look at his results only in the third week of his previous Grand Tours. That is just amazing what Bob Jungels has been able to do. That was truly amazing. Let's take a look at his last Giro, for instance, where they started in the first week at the Etna, and he was awful on that day. And in the second week he got distanced a little bit by the climbers, by the pure climbers, and in the third week he was actually dragging some riders up the road. He was actually, for instance, at one time helping Dumoulin limit his losses after he got dropped, and he was pushed back, he was held back to the other favorites by Bob Jungels, because he was so strong inside the last week. So, and this year's route of the Giro d'Italia, like I said before, the real climbs only start inside the second week. So Bob Jungels won't lose much time in the first week, because there are no climbs when he is still finding his form and when the recovery rate of the other riders is still just as good. But come the third week, look out for that rider of the Koenig Quickstep. He also has a young teammate with him in James Knox, who is a very promising rider. He got better every year that he is with the Koenig. I think he could be a target of Ineos, because he is one of the big British talents of the future. And he was actually the second best placed rider aged 23 or younger. Only De Plus was better than him also former De Koning, now riding for Jumbo-Visma and in support of Roglic. But yeah, James Knox could be a valuable helper for Bob Jungels during this race. So yeah. But now two riders who did not finish quite as good. For instance, we had Landa. Landa finished 107 down at the end. Yes, he's not the best time trialer, but he's a super climber. But that is a lot of time to make up on the mountains, especially already losing so much time to, for instance, Miguel Angel Lopez, who was also not considered the best time trialist. So Landa, this is not the result he had hoped for, the Movistar captain. Then we had Ilnur Zakarin. He also lost even more time. He lost 1 minute and 20 seconds. So Katyusha is in shambles right now. Over the last week we had the case that Kittel announced that he would terminate his contract with the team, and still only 2 wins for the season of them. And now this bad time of Zakarin, I said in my preview that Zakarin has to deliver for this team. They need it badly. And well, he did not deliver badly. His result was bad. So yeah, still Katyusha not up to par this season. Their results have been really awful. It hurts to say that a team, they actually have some decent riders on their squad, but something is just not clicking this year. We've seen it with Education First last year. They had no results for most of the season. They actually started winning a few races in the fall, but until then, nothing from them. And now this year in the spring already, they win races left and right, get good placings with Dani Martinez, Bettiol, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, maybe Katyusha can turn it around soon, but it has to happen soon, because sponsorship in cycling, if you don't get results on a daily basis, sponsors are gone easily. Then another rider who did not finish that well was Tony Galopin. He also lost a minute. And now with him the question is, will he still go for general classification? Will he go for stage wins? Will he be a stage hunter? I'm still not quite sure what is best for him. I think he should go for stage hunting. There he could get 1-2 stages. While general classification, he will at best ride for a top 10 placing, more likely top 20. His last 2 Grand Tours where he went for GC, he finished in 11th place, so missed out barely on the top 10 the last 2 times. And the field in this year's Giro is very, very strong, so could be even harder for him to reach that goal of a 10th place or even better. Another bad time was Sam Oomen, who also almost lost 2 minutes, and he was the best young rider last year in the Giro in 2018, and now he finished in, what was it, 147. And to give you some perspective, Reto Hollenstein finished 1 second behind him, and he had a dropped chain at the start of the climb. So that should tell you a lot how bad Sam Oomen was with his race at the end. Yeah, then another rider, yeah, Sosa lost 2 minutes. We talked about that before that I mentioned. Bilbao actually had a really good time. He was really decent for Astana, gives them another option to attack. And yeah, that will be interesting to see. What does Jumbo-Visma do when the other teams will send their secondary riders up the road? Like I said, Formolo, Pello Bilbao, Sivakov at this moment. If those kind of riders attack, especially if they attack together, or Caruso even for that case, also very good placing for him. What will the team do? Can Laurens de Plus do it all on his own? Are the other riders at Jumbo-Visma strong enough to control the race for Primož Roglič, because having the leader's jersey puts a lot of pressure on his team, and we'll have to see how they cope with that. Yeah, those are the riders that I made some notes about. One other rider I want to mention, or two other riders. Marečko was actually second to last in this time trial, and this dude has to be really considered the worst climber in the peloton. I really like his sprint. He is quite fast, but his problem is that once there is a tiny bump in the road, he gets dropped instantly. And yeah, he needs really pan-flat stages. Maybe he would be better on the track, because most stages have some hills in them. And Marečko just instantly gets dropped when they appear. Once again, second to the last rider. Only Matti Breschel was worse than him. From the guys who were inside the time limit, we had one rider who didn't make the time cut on the first day of the Giro d'Italia. That is quite sad to see that happening. That rider is already out after the first stage, which was only an individual time trial of 8 kilometers, and still could not finish because Roglič put in such a strong performance. The rider was actually Hiroki Nishimura. He finished with a time of 4 minutes and 36 behind the eventual winner. And yeah, that was not enough for the jury to keep him inside the race. So yeah, that's my thoughts for the opening day of the Giro d'Italia. Quite a few surprising results, a few expected, a lot of ground to make up for some riders, which will be interesting, but the course of this year is so that probably for the next few days we will only have sprinters celebrating at the end. So the real general classification action only starts in a week or so, not until then. Yeah, I guess that's it for me for now, and just like Nishimura, I'm out.